Anyways, let's get into it. Interesting story out of the Morning Brew. And by the way, I get this question a lot because I consume a lot of information. You know, I have a regular 9-to-5 job, AKA doing mortgages. And then on top of that, I do this podcast. And on top of that, I run a coaching business for loan officers. So I'm working somewhere like 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And I consume a ton of information, podcasts, periodicals, books. And a lot of times I get questions asked of like, hey, where do you source information for these podcasts? So there's actually 3 emails I get every morning. And I highly recommend if you want like a little 5-minute snippet every day on different topics on politics, economics, technology. I highly recommend checking out these 3. One is the Morning Brew, and you can just go to morningbrew.com. It's like your little 5-minute daily email you can look over while you're having your morning coffee. I love the flip side. If I was a angel investor, venture capitalist, I would 100% put a couple $100,000 into the flip side, because this is an amazing daily email that goes out, and I'll show you one of their archives. This is a daily email that goes out that hits kind of the hot button political item of the day. And then in the email or here on the website, it will show you, okay, what are the talking points from the right and what are the talking points for the left? And I've spoken to the CEO of this company, who's an amazing lady, and her and about 7 other political junkies from all different walks of life got together and created this newsletter and this website. I think they're actually in their B or C round of funding. They've got a couple 100,000 people on their email list with an insane open rate and exposure rate and click-through rate, because their content is really good. So if you find yourself more right-leaning and you'd really like to get kind of a balanced view from what the left is thinking about things, or if you're far on the left and you're like, hey, I really want to be a little bit more fair and balanced, pun intended, and figure out what the right is thinking, this is a great daily email where it attacks one issue, gives you the talking points from each side of the political aisle, and I can't say enough good things about the flipside.io. And then the hustle.co is kind of a fun little daily newsletter that talks about different technology trends, business trends, things of that nature. So we're actually going to review a story from 2 of the 3 of these. And, you know, the Morning Brew, actually really good news that U.S. household wealth rises to record high in second quarter of 2021. So, good news, right? Lots of negative stuff going on the last 18 months, lots of reasons to be frustrated and scared, and a lot of people facing financial turmoil. But if we take a step back, if we zoom out, if we look at the 30,000-foot view of what's going on overall with the overall populace in America, the good news is that household wealth is up considerably by $5.85 trillion, right? And I'm not sure, I'll have to look on here what time period. I think they were looking over year over year. No, the net worth of U.S. households rose to a record $141 trillion in the second quarter, up 19% from a year ago, 20%. Now, you know, to the richest in America go a lot of the spoils. So we do have to accept that of that 141 trillion, that 20% increase, which gets us to 141 trillion. A lot of that, yes, it did go to the top 1%. Yes, Jeff Bezos is extremely wealthy and even more wealthy than he was a year ago, because Amazon is basically the number 1 company in the world right now. And what's been going on the last 18 months have obviously made, you know, having a Prime account, having instant delivery or 1-day delivery or 2-day delivery or 4-hour delivery, whatever you have in your neighborhood, has made that really valuable. And the surging stock market, which unfortunately, despite the government's best efforts, society's best efforts, your employees' best efforts, despite everybody's best effort to try to get everybody into the stock market with 401ks, with IRAs, with self-directed retirement plans, I think the last study I read was something like only 25 or 30% of Americans still have money in the stock market. Chris, maybe you could look that up. You could do a quick Google search on what percentage of Americans have money in the stock market. It's a really sad stat, because the reality is there's basically 2 ways. Well, there's 3 ways in America that are the most common routes to get wealthy. One is to own your own business, become self-employed and work in your own business, take advantage of the tax write-offs that come with that and grow your own thing. Number 2 is to own property, most millionaires in America got there because they own property. And then number 3 is to invest in the stock market long term. Put money in the stock market. Don't think about it. Let it ride out through the ups and downs and accumulate wealth. So the good news is wealth is at a record high. Bad news is a lot of that is in kind of a concentrated amount of people, but it looks like Chris maybe found the answer or found some stat.
Yeah, it says 56% as of August 2021.
Oh, that's great news.
Where in 2001 to 2008, the average was 62%. So it is lower. It bottomed out in like 2016 and it's slowly rising.
Okay. So that's good. More than 50% of Americans have some money in the stock market, which is definitely significantly higher percentage than I would have thought. But, you know, the good news here is that the net worth, the biggest increases from this article, it talked about 3.5 trillion of it came from the increase in the stock market, and about 1.2 trillion of it came from appreciation in the housing market. So the thought is, if you've got some money in stocks, 401ks, securities, mutual funds, something like that, and if you own a house, you're really crushing it over the last 12 months. But even if we look at these numbers, you know, let's see, 1.2 trillion on house appreciation, 3.5 trillion on the stock market. So that's 4.7 trillion minus 5.85 trillion. You know, that still leaves $1.1 trillion in net worth increase, because simply Americans are not wasting as much money going out to eat, frivolous spending. Maybe people got a little scared about what was going on the last 18 months and decided to bolster up their savings. Savings accounts are up, which probably means real income for those that are still working is up. So this is all really, really good news. And I think so much of the media right now is nonstop fear porn that once in a while it's good to zoom out, look at the overall numbers for yourself and be like, hey, there is a large cross section, maybe 10, 20, as much as 30% of the country who's really struggling. But the silver lining is that means for 60, 70, 80, 90% of the country who has some type of stock portfolio, owns a piece of property, has buckled down and stopped some of the frivolous spending, and maybe really, really concentrated on growing that emergency fund, net worth of the country is up in a big way. Now, of course, my cynical opinion is the government's just going to find a way to tax that and take as much of that back as possible to the government. But that's a different story for later on in the podcast. But just, you know, starting with some good news. And that's from the Morning Brew. I could talk all day long, every day about the flipside.io. So I won't talk about too much of that. Just trust me, subscribe to their newsletter. It's a cool 5 or 10 minute quick read. And you know what I love about the flip side is that if you find yourself living in a bubble where you're just shaking your head and nodding at everything that Sean Hannity says on Fox News, or if you find your head shaking and nodding to everything that Rachel Maddow says on MSNBC, you're probably living in a bubble that's effectively a lot more like a cult than an informed political opinion. So subscribe to the Flipside.io and get some excellent talking points and some excellent thoughts from what the other side is thinking. Because, you know, if you can't be empathetic, sympathetic, or at least understand what your political enemies are thinking, then you don't really have a well thought out political point of your own. Like, one of the things that I think I can most articulately argue is the pro-choice versus pro-life argument, because at various times in my life, I've been on polar opposites of that discussion. There's times where I've been very pro-life. There's times where I've been very pro-choice. We'll do a whole episode one day when I can interview some interesting people on that to talk about where I currently stand. But I feel like doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum, I can jump in there and have a great argument because I've lived on both sides of that political and societal divide. So do yourself a favor, subscribe to the flipside.io.